Yeah, my name's Robert Beckford. I am an academic and broadcaster based in the Midlands. My family are from the beautiful island of Jamaica, but that comes with a double consciousness. One, the consciousness of transatlantic chattel slavery, because that's the reason why people of African heritage are on the island. And the second aspect of the double consciousness is the redress for that history. And that leads nicely into the subject of repair and reparations.
My name is Gale Richards. I am a regional Baptist minister based in Cambridgeshire, and I'm also a postdoctoral researcher at the Centre for Baptist Studies, even Regent's Park, Oxford. As it happens, my parents are also from the beautiful island of Jamaica. So Robert and I share that heritage, that story. And for me, I think of it also in terms of very personal terms. Some of the struggle I have seen and witnessed with regards to people that I'm connected to, I think that is marginalized, ignored, often by the church. And I welcome the opportunity for that to be center stage and taken more seriously. So, Robert, you are the genius when it comes to titles. So tell us the title that we're working with.
Yeah, the title that we're working with of this session, but it's subject to change, is Reparations: Three Deadly Sins. The three deadly sins of reparations. And basically, there are three areas that reparations or people involved in repair of transatlantic chattel slavery have to address because they're danger areas. The first is the danger area in terms of discourse, because how you define reparations has a profound impact on its progress. And as we'll talk about on the day, there are a multitude of definitions, and every definition is politically determined, not theologically determined, because theologically determined definitions have a particular trajectory. I'm arguing instead that they are politically determined because they're fundamentally about negotiating power. The second deadly sin concerns the accounting. If you look at reparations as a feature of transitional justice or as a feature of transformative justice, it comes with a discrete set of accounting practices for how you calculate the damage done, although we know that the economic damage is not the only dimension of reparatory justice. But at the moment, nobody's doing any kind of proper accounting. And that's the second deadly sin. And I would say one plus one equals two. The third deadly sin is if you control the discourse, if you control the finance, then ultimately you control the people. And really, that isn't reparations at all.
When I come at this as a Baptist, and so the British Baptists, we are known as pioneers in terms of starting this journey of reparations, in terms of many of the mainline denominations. And so for us, it started with an apology in 2007. And I'm interested in reflecting on what that journey has been like 18 years on, as other denominations have followed suit. For me, it's been fascinating to see how things have developed. And I think there are some serious lessons to be learned. And so these three deadly sins that you refer to, Robert, it would be fascinating to explore how they appear or take shape or form within the Baptist story along this journey.
I think that's a brilliant starting point, starting with the Baptist tradition. However, I would make my starting point a little bit earlier because you'll know as a Jamaican that the idea of repairing the damage of transatlantic chattel slavery begins from the moment that enslaved Africans land on the island. Things like maroonage, runaway slaves, is a form of repair, a resistance to transatlantic chattel slavery and undoing some of its damage. One may even look at the first writings by Caribbean people in the early 1900s, again to resist slavery and ask for repair. You know, there's a longer history.
Interesting.
One may even think in terms of the Rastafari movement from Garvey in the 1920s through to the 1950s, all calling on the British establishment, including churches, to repair the damage. So I would make the chronology slightly longer and argue that where the churches fit in at the moment is kind of like at a midpoint in the story of reparations. And therefore, if we take a longer
Absolutely.
view, We take a
Dear
longer.
Robert, I agree with you in many ways. Okay. But recognizing as you tell the story, because, if we reflect on how did the British Baptists arrive at saying we need to make this apology in 2007, there's a backstory. So it will be interesting as I share, reflecting on some of that journey. It didn't just happen. British Baptists didn't wake up one day and say, hey, we need to do an apology. There was quite a lot of input with regard to Jamaican Baptists. Jamaican Baptists and that dialogue, that working together, has been really significant in terms of the journey. And that partnership with Jamaican Baptists stems back until sort of like 19th century. So I think the Baptist story will probably touch upon some of the things that you're talking about, but recognizing this wonderful conference, this seminar we're going to be a part of, we will have a limited amount of time, but we promise to make sure we touch on the key points, and definitely the space and time that people will have to discuss in small groups, and the time that you and I will have to take questions. It's going to be fascinating to see what emerges. And in terms of your depth of knowledge and research in this area, and my very practical experience, and recent research, particularly from a Baptist lens, but not exclusively. It's going to be interesting where that takes us, especially when the gathered group will be so ecumenical, drawn from so many different branches of the church. And it's going to be interesting to see how that weaves together and these three deadly sins come to the fore.
Definitely, I think there'll be lots of points of creative tension, fundamentally because I believe what's taking place amongst the church groups today is not reparations, neither reparatory justice. At best, it's a form of social justice. And why do I say that? Because fundamentally, all of these projects are perpetrator driven, and real reparations always starts with, ends with the victims. So I'm going to be quite provocative and critical and suggest that what's happening now is in many respects a dynamic equivalent of the failure in Christian theology to recognize the full humanity of Black people. Because if you recognize people as being fully human, then you treat them accordingly and you treat them using particular standards in terms of repair and in terms of justice. And for me, looking critically at the Christian approach, it doesn't match up to what reparations is. And this fissure, this breakage within it, this failure, I would say is part of a longer failure in terms of the Western Christian imagination to take Black and brown bodies seriously and as fully human. So hopefully we'll get some creative tension by me taking a particular stance on this, a critical stance in relation to what the Christian traditions are doing at this point in time.
And as we shine a light through some of what I share on a particular denomination's journey and interrogate that, it's going to be fascinating to see what emerges, because we've got an embodied way of playing with some of these principles that you will bring to the table. I can't wait.
Fantastic. Looking forward to it also. And I think it's a great conference to be a part of, being missional today. But again, if we place that conference title in dialogue with this history, it also raises some creative tensions because mission, in the traditional sense of the word in the Caribbean, is deeply problematic. Mission is tied with the colonial history, the history of violent settler colonialism across the Americas. So I hope that this conversation won't just open up opportunities for thinking about reparations, but thinking about deconstruction, or should I say decolonizing, what mission actually means today, because generally the term has been abolished within progressive Christian circles. And instead, people talk about ethical praxis as a better way of evaluating the task and purpose of the church in the world today. So my interest is not just with reparations, but also maybe having a dialogue with the broader conference and the themes and the ideas that underpin it.
And I guess the question is always with these, do we try and reclaim a term, redefine it, or do we adopt a new one? And I'm particularly interested in how we reshape, redefine mission and being missional.
And all we need to do now is talk about Manchester United and we're sorted.
No, Aston Villa, come on now, Robert. We know. We're on the ascendancy.
Actually, I'm not a Manchester United fan. I was just saying
Well,
because
absolutely. But look at the connection. Marcus Rashford, anybody? Aston
well,
Villa, his
well,
transfer.
we can find in sport a connection with transatlantic chattel slavery and its legacies. So if we look at yesterday, the Manchester City women's team striker, Bonnie, I've forgotten the surname, Bonnie Shaw, who is the Jamaican captain of the women's football team. I think she's a captain, she's a striker. And yesterday, when she scored, giving a Black Power fist in celebration. Why? In response to racist hate mail that she's been receiving online over the last week or two. And that history of sport and issues around racialized oppression, deeply connected to histories of transatlantic slavery and the repair. So, one of the areas of repair we might say is what do we do about racialized oppression and how that is etched into Christian theology? So, we need
So
to get it
interesting.
out.
Interesting, Robert, that connection. Being an Aston Villa supporter, I know Aston Villa has an important role in the founding of the Football League that we know in the British context. And it has church links. So there's even a link with sport and church. So again, as we explore these links, as you say, it's incredibly important and relevant that we know that history. For me, the Being Missional Conference is a unique opportunity to hear from people who are willing to really interrogate our understanding of mission. I think for me, there's a diversity in the speakers, the people that will be there. There's going to be different lenses that are brought to the space, to the conversation. I think it's going to be provocative, to use a word that Robert loves to use. I think it's going to be challenging. I think it could even be revolutionary.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the conference because it has an array of progressive Christian thinkers and speakers. And I think that's really important in the age in which we live in, where there has been a reaction to progressive Christian ideas around justice, inclusion, especially social justice, peace studies, global security and equality. So I see this as an attempt to re-establish, reaffirm the best of the Christian liberal traditions within Britain that seek to foreground the justice at the heart of the gospel as a way of engaging with the world in which we live.